As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of fiery orange and soft pink, I found myself standing at the edge of the local lake near the forest. It was a Friday evening, and I had been yearning to escape the hustle and bustle of city life for a while. The lake, surrounded by tall trees and enveloped in serene quietness, seemed like the perfect place to unwind. I had packed my fishing gear earlier that morning, knowing that this weekend was going to be a special one. After a long day at work, I was eager to spend some time alone, reliving the carefree days of my childhood spent fishing by the lakeside. The drive to the lake was calming, with the window rolled down and the cool evening breeze brushing against my face. I couldn't help but feel excited as I pulled into the parking lot and grabbed my gear from the trunk. As I walked towards the water, my anticipation grew. The lake shimmered under the fading light, reflecting the colors of the sky. The forest that bordered the lake seemed to be alive with the sound of birds chirping and leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. I found a secluded spot by the water's edge and set up my gear. The stillness of the lake was inviting, and I cast my line into the water, hoping to catch a big one. As I waited for a bite, I took in the sights and sounds of the forest around me. The tall trees swayed gently in the wind, casting long shadows over the water. The sound of the birds in the distance was a soothing lullaby, and I felt myself relaxing into the moment. After fishing for about an hour without any luck, I decided to change spots. I packed up my gear and wandered further along the shore, searching for a new place to cast my line. The sun had dipped below the horizon by the time I found a promising spot. I set up my gear once again and cast my line into the water. I waited patiently, hoping for a bite. As time passed, the darkness began to creep in, and I realized that I had lost track of time. I looked up at the sky and saw that it was almost completely dark. I decided to pack up my gear and head back to my car. As I made my way back through the forest, I heard footsteps behind me. I stopped and looked around, but I didn't see anyone. I shrugged it off and continued walking. Suddenly, I heard the footsteps again, closer this time. I turned around quickly, but there was no one there. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I tried to stay calm. As I walked, I heard the footsteps again, and this time I saw a figure standing among the trees. I froze, unsure of what to do. The figure didn't move, but I had a feeling that I was being watched. I tried to stay calm and act like I didn't see the figure. After a few moments, I glanced back and saw that the figure was gone. I picked up my pace and started to run. I didn't know who or what was following me, but I didn't want to stick around to find out. I dropped my fishing gear in my haste to get to my car. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I ran. Finally, I reached my car and jumped in, locking the doors behind me. I looked around but didn't see anyone or anything. It was eerie being alone in the forest with no one else around. I started the car and drove home as quickly as I could. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching me. I kept checking the rearview mirror, but there was nothing there. Once I arrived home, I quickly locked the door and went straight to bed. I didn't sleep well that night, and the events of the evening replayed in my mind. The next morning, I woke up feeling shaken but determined to go back to the lake and find out what had happened. As I drove back to the lake, I noticed a group of people gathered at the entrance to the forest. I parked my car and approached the group, asking if everything was okay. It turned out that a young woman had gone missing the night before while hiking in the forest. The police were searching for her, and the group was helping with the search. I felt a pang of guilt as I listened to the details of the case. Could the figure I saw in the forest be connected to the missing woman? I knew I had to do something. I joined the search party and spent the rest of the day combing through the forest, but we found no sign of the missing woman. As the sun set and darkness fell, the search was called off for the night, and I made my way back to my car. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something sinister at play. The next morning, the news broke that the missing woman's body had been found in the forest. She had been brutally murdered. I felt a sense of dread wash over me. Could the figure I saw in the forest have been the killer? I knew I had to report what I saw to the police. I went to the police station and told them everything I knew. They listened intently and thanked me for my help. I knew that I had done the right thing. As the days passed, the forest became a place of fear and suspicion. People avoided it at all costs, and the once popular fishing spot became a desolate wasteland. I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread every time I drove by the lake, and I knew that I would never be able to forget the horror of that night. I had always looked forward to our family vacations. They were an escape from the stress of school, work, and the hustle and bustle of everyday life. This time, we had decided to rent a house near a lake nestled in the heart of nature. The photos of the serene lake surrounded by lush greenery had drawn us in, promising relaxation and fun. Little did we know, the calm waters held a chilling secret. The day we arrived, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. We hurried to unpack and settle in before nightfall. As we finished, my cousins, my brother, and I were eager to explore the lake. Our parents, sensing our excitement, gave us a curfew of 11 p.m., warning us to be cautious and responsible. The path to the lake was lined with trees, their leaves rustling in the gentle evening breeze. We laughed and joked as we walked, our footsteps echoing in the silence. When we reached the lake, it was as tranquil as it had appeared in the pictures. The water was still, reflecting the fading light. Strangely, there was not another soul in sight. We swam and played in the water, the coolness refreshing after the long drive. As the sun disappeared behind the trees, casting shadows on the water, we reluctantly decided it was time to head back. My cousin, feeling tired, chose to stay by the lake, promising to wait for us. My brother and I set off to buy snacks from the nearby store, leaving our cousin to rest. The store was not far, but the walk felt longer in the gathering darkness. We hurried, eager to get back to the lake. We returned after what felt like an eternity, our arms laden with snacks. As we approached our cousin, we saw something that sent a chill down our spines. He was lying on the ground, his face contorted in pain. My heart pounded in my chest as we rushed to his side. He was clutching his arm, blood seeping through his fingers. Shocked and terrified, he told us what had happened. A man, with wild eyes and a knife, had appeared out of nowhere, demanding my cousin's backpack. My cousin, defiant and courageous, had refused, and in the ensuing struggle, the man had stabbed him. My brother and I were filled with a mix of anger and fear. We quickly called an ambulance, who arrived in what felt like seconds. They whisked my cousin away, leaving us standing there, shaken and bewildered. The police arrived shortly after, followed by our parents. We explained everything, and they listened with grave expressions. The next day, we visited my cousin in the hospital. He had been released, his arm bandaged and his spirits somewhat lifted. We learned that the robber had been caught after attempting to rob another person. The news brought us some relief, but the memory of that night lingered like a dark cloud. My cousin's family decided to cut their vacation short and head home. My family, however, chose to stay. The lake, once a source of joy and relaxation, now held a sinister presence. I couldn't bring myself to swim in its waters again, my fear overpowering any desire for fun or adventure. It was a vacation that I would never forget, but for all the wrong reasons. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the forest grew dark around us, my friends and I knew it was time to head home. The day had been long, filled with laughter and adventure, but now it was time to return to reality. But before we could say our goodbyes, we made one final stop at our secret spot, a beautiful lake nestled deep in the heart of the forest. This lake was no ordinary body of water, it was our own personal oasis, where we could escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life and just be free. We spent countless hours swimming in its cool waters, exploring its shores, and creating memories that would last a lifetime. But on that particular day, something felt different. As we made our way through the dense forest, we noticed that the usually bustling area was eerily quiet. The birds had stopped singing, and the trees seemed to sway in anticipation of something. But we brushed off the feeling, chalking it up to the late hour and the exhaustion from our bike ride. When we finally reached the lake, the atmosphere was tense. The air was cool, and the water was still, like a mirror reflecting the darkening sky above. We hesitated, feeling a sense of unease wash over us. But we were determined to make the most of our time there, so we pushed through the discomfort and waded into the water. As we swam out into the center of the lake, we noticed that the shadows seemed to grow darker around us. It was as if the forest itself was closing in on us, enveloping us in its embrace. The water felt colder than usual, sending shivers down our spines. But we pressed on, swimming further out into the lake. We were lost in our own thoughts, not paying attention to the world around us. That's when we heard it, the sound of footsteps crunching on the forest floor. At first, we thought it was just our imaginations playing tricks on us. But as the footsteps grew louder and more insistent, we realized that someone or something was out there, watching us from the shadows. We called out, asking if anyone was there, but there was no response. The footsteps continued, growing louder and more menacing with each passing second. Fear gripped our hearts as we realized that we were not alone. Without a second thought, we swam back to shore and made a mad dash for our clothes. We could hear the footsteps behind us, gaining speed as they drew closer. Panic set in as we fumbled with our clothes, struggling to dress ourselves as quickly as possible. As we sprinted through the forest, the sound of the footsteps grew louder and more menacing. It was as if whatever was chasing us was right on our heels, ready to pounce at any moment. We didn't dare look back, fearing what we might see. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we burst out of the forest and onto the road. We didn't stop running until we were safely back in town, far away from the lake and whatever had been lurking in its depths. We never went back to that lake again, and we never spoke of that evening to anyone. It was a memory that haunted us for years, a reminder of how quickly things can go wrong in the blink of an eye.